Welcome. Welcome to another masterclass. My name is Matt Symonds. I'm one of the co-founders of Fortuna Admissions. And over a 4-week period, we've taken a very specific direction with the webinars that we offer. We're mindful that round one deadlines are just around the corner. And personally, I predict that those round one deadlines are going to be very busy. And that may well apply to all of you from wherever you're joining us, from Singapore, from London, from the West Coast. Great that you can join us for the third in a series where we've been really focusing on the essays of the application. As you know, with Fortuna, we do many sessions that will cover letters of recommendation, your GPA and GMAT, when to apply round one versus round two, all of the strategies, the pieces of the puzzle that you're putting together. And there's a wealth of information on Fortuna's website and on our different social channels, YouTube in particular. But as I said, today really will be a focus on essays. In the past 2 weeks, we've looked at Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Columbia, Sloan, Chicago, Booth, and Kellogg. And today it's the turn of 4 other world-class business schools. We'll be focusing on Berkeley Haas, on Duke Fuqua, NYU Stern, and the Tuck School at Dartmouth. I often talk about the dream team at Fortuna, a dream team of well over 40 former assistant deans, associate deans, admissions directors, associate directors, a dream team, of course, because as many of you know, they have held positions of leadership and responsibility in these business schools, reading your applications, or certainly the generations before. But for me, they're also a dream team because they're incredibly kind, they're very creative, and they're extraordinarily committed. And for me, those are wonderful qualities of a dream team. So as you know, we spend a lot of time talking to you as you're making your own personal plans for business school. Do reach out to us, set up an appointment. It's a free consultation, and we really take the time looking through your resumes, any other details that you want us to consider, so that we can look at your next steps, assess your chances for business school, and hopefully have a really insightful and informative conversation. For today's session, I'm joined by colleagues, great friends, Pete Johnson. Pete is one of our directors at Fortuna and is a former assistant dean of the full-time MBA program and of admissions at Berkeley Haas. Also with us, Catherine Tuttle, another of our expert coaches and at Fortuna, and a former associate director at Duke Fuqua. Trisha Nussbaum is also with us without her earphones, so we expect lots of arm movement as she's sharing her experience at NYU. She's an MBA from the program, an alumna, and was also a tech consultant, both professionally and at Stern. And Jonathan Masland, another expert coach who was the former executive director of careers at Dartmouth Tuck, and we'll talk about the whole dialogue that goes on between the admissions office and careers. I talked about the agenda, and so we're going to jump in with Haas. And one of the elements, of course, is the idea that Berkeley Haas has introduced a video. But before we get there, Pete, I just wanted to step back and maybe just talk about what Haas is fundamentally looking for in an applicant to the MBA program.
Well, great question, Matt, and happy to share a little bit of my perspective on that, having had many years crafting exactly that, a class of people that we felt would both benefit from the MBA program at Haas, but also would bring something to it. And one of the things I think it's important to share with candidates is, in the back of your mind, you should always be thinking about not only what am I going to get from the MBA program that I'm applying to, but what am I going to give to that experience that will benefit my classmates? Most programs are looking at that, and I think it's something that applicants can overlook. In any case, what we're looking for, what Haas is looking for, is people who are well prepared to come into the program and make good use of the 2-year experience, and to really move forward with their professional and personal goals. Because there are a lot of, all of the schools that are talking today have the advantage of having a large pool of talented people to choose from. And there is a reason that they're trying to select the people that they feel are going to benefit the most from that experience. And so in the case of Haas, they're looking for individuals who not only have a good professional resume and have certainly solid academic preparation, but they're looking for people who are going to be a cultural fit for the program. And to give you a sense of what that is, I would direct everyone to the famous Haas defining leadership principles. Those were put in place under the former dean, Rich Lyons, a few years ago. And I think they really do reflect the culture of the program and the kinds of leaders that they hope to develop at Berkeley Haas. So of course, the DLPs are question the status quo, confidence without attitude, my personal favorite, students always, and beyond yourself. And thinking about how you reflect those principles is an important part of presenting a strong application to Berkeley Haas.
I often wonder, Pete, given Rich Lyons' propensity to sit at a campfire with a guitar, if everyone was singing along with those four principles. Let's go to your favorite, the idea of confidence without attitude, because this idea of bringing out the best in others, certainly something very close to the heart of Haas. How do candidates find that balance between sharing their story, their accomplishments, without then sort of overselling and equally showing how they've helped the development of others?
That's a great question, Matt, because I think people resonate with one or more of the principles in different ways. And my favorite, confidence without attitude, is really, I think, more simply put, it's being confident, but still retaining some humility. Humility that you don't have all the answers. Humility that you're hopefully always in a learning and growth mode. And being able to, it doesn't mean, being shy about sharing the things that you've accomplished or the things that you want to do. It simply means leaving space in that conversation for other voices and for an opportunity to learn from others that you're working with. And I think if you look at it in that kind of a holistic way, I think it makes more sense to people. Sometimes people look at that and think, oh, so should I be sort of reticent about sharing my values or my qualities? And that's not what it's about. Yeah. It's about recognizing that you're not the smartest person in the room.
Right. Now, all four of you will share, I think, the message of make sure that you answer the question. Is there a temptation, do you think, Pete, with candidates that have taken their time, they've done the research, they've identified these four defining leadership principles, and they're thinking, right, okay, so I've got to squeeze each and every one of these principles into my essays, tick box 1, 2, 3, done it. Okay, they're going to love this.
Yeah, that's not usually a successful strategy. And I think it's even more to your point, Matt, this year is more difficult than ever because Haas has moved the question about the DLPs into this video introduction format, where the candidate is asked to introduce themselves with a 2-minute video to the admissions committee. Trying to address all four principles in a 2-minute video while presenting yourself in a good way as a good communicator and a thoughtful person doesn't really work. You really have to decide which one, or maybe at the outside 2 principles, resonate with you and have a good answer to that. It's not only not necessary, but it's not wise to try and squeeze all 4 of them into that answer or into any of the particular essay questions. So
we're seeing more and more schools, Pete, that are introducing video. Let's think Yale has it, INSEAD has it. Typically, it's about a minute. Now it's 2 minutes, so twice as long as Sloan and other schools. How do you recommend applicants to sort of sit down and prepare so they don't come across as too scripted, and yet they're going to use full use of those 120 seconds?
Yeah, I think it's really important to start with a little mini brainstorm to think about, okay, how am I going to answer this question? What are the leadership principles that reflect most of me? So it might be, say, students always. So then you want to unpack, well, what does that mean? And also important, how does it show up in my life and in my work, because you want to be able to connect the principle to something that you demonstrate in your life and your work. So you don't want to just say, oh, well, students always is my favorite principle. You want to be able to say why. And in fact, one of the things I often tell clients when we're talking about applications for all schools is you should always be prepared to say why for any answer that you give. Why is this important to me? Why is that my career goal? Why is this an area of development that I have identified for myself? So starting with what your principle is, why it's important, and then from there, I actually encourage people to come up with a loose script or perhaps some bullet points, and to be really solid on that, so that when you do record your video, and Haas asks that you do it in one take, so no clever editing, and it's important to be able to sort of fluidly present your points without having to read or without looking at your notes.
Right. Imagine, Catherine, if one of our favorite questions, Fuqua and the 25 random things about you, imagine if that was turned into a video. It would be a Netflix series by the time we got to the end. Now, we do really enjoy that video, but before we jump in, and much like Pete's advice, taking the time to get to know the institution, that's where you like to start, of engaging with the school.
Yes, with Fuqua, I think it's incredibly important. I mean, with all of the schools, but Fuqua in general, who really prides itself on the culture and the community. It's incredibly important that you engage with the school before starting to write the essays, and they've really, kind of woven that into the process through that second essay that they introduced a few years ago about 3 ways that you will make a positive impact. And to Pete's point about not listing every principle, it used to be that they kind of left it open-ended and said, how would you contribute? And people were listing every single club they ever wanted to be involved with. And so I love that they've, tailored it to 3 things specifically. But they have a number of ways to engage. You can engage with the admissions ambassadors. Those are folks who are, made available. Their email is available on the website. There's a whole background on them and their previous experience and where they're hoping to go. Alumni tend to be great resources, especially if you can get some recent folks who, remember that joy of being on campus and graduating. And then admissions recently in the past couple of years has offered to do calls with prospective students, which can be an incredible opportunity to make a personal connection when you are ready. I think that's the key point there. We want to make sure you've done some engaging and research before you get to that point. But in order to really answer the questions, even the 25 random things, you have to have talked with people and gained a better understanding of the culture and the community.
Well, part of our community, Kima, who I've spoken to before. Hi, Kima, thanks for reaching out. I know that you're a little under the weather, Catherine, but if we can get your booming voice, just so that everyone can hear you clearly, because there is so much to share. You pointed out in terms of clubs and how they might align with personal or professional interests. There's the Building Outdoor Leaders at Duke, BOLD.
Yes.
How could you use that to illustrate the sort of what you would then bring to the Fuqua community?
Yeah, so I think and Pete mentioned this too, how have you lived these principles, right? Or why are they important to you? Identify things in your life that have been important to you that have made an impact. So for example, I have a client who's very into outdoor activity and pushing himself through skiing and mountain climbing and rappelling. And so he connected that with Duke Bold, which is growing your leadership skills through outdoor activities. But there's a number of other clubs, personally and professionally. We want to go beyond just, I'm going to join the consulting club and become president, right? And it is, listing a professional club is important. It gives you the opportunity to build out some of the career goals that you don't get necessarily in the very short, what are your career goals answers within the application. But we want to be able to show other things that are important to you. I've had clients who were very big on mentoring during their undergrad experience. So Fuqua to Duke was a great thing to talk about, right? So that's where Fuqua students mentor Duke undergrads. I've had people talk about Fuqua Vision, which is kind of silly videos and things that they showcase at Fuqua Friday. And so if you've been involved in drama or comedy that's something to talk about. But again, to get to a point where you can really write about something in a meaningful way, you have to talk to people and connect your previous experience with their specific goals and initiatives. So it's not just, I want to join the club and I want to be president. It's much more impactful to say, I want to join the consulting club, who I understand launched a new initiative last year that is geared towards, experiential opportunity in collaboration with this club. And so I can build that out. Those are the types of specifics that we want within that answer.
And in terms of going that step further, just thinking earlier, we were talking about this new theme covered in the New York Times about bed rotting in bed, which isn't going to get you very far for an outdoor leadership club. Yep. But the idea of Fuqua for so many years, staying with 25 random things, and perhaps random is misleading. How do you again, a sort of a process to start to brainstorm and bring together, 40, 50, 100 ideas before you then bring them down to the 25?
Yes, I would say 100 might be taking it a little far. As a coach, that would be a lot to go with. I think that random is probably misleading. There can be random things within there, random snippets. I still remember a client who had, my friends tell me my handwriting looks like typewriter font. That is a random funny thing that will stick in your head and kind of shows some personality. But really we want to link, our 25 things as much as possible to the Fuqua principles, similar to Haas, right? So integrity and loyal community and impact, supportive ambition. We want to think of things that align with that: collaboration, diversity, equity, and inclusion, global exposure. So think of examples in your life that speak to those things. And you can have some bullets that are longer and some that are shorter. I've had a client years ago, and I still remember this story. He was hiking in India. He's an Indian male, and he was going alone, but on the trail, he met someone from Spain and an American, and none of them could speak the same language, but they used Google Translate, finished the trail, and are still friends. They get together, and now they've learned more of each other's languages. So that was a longer bullet. That was 3 or 4 sentences compared to, I have typewriter font handwriting, but it's something that illustrates global exposure, collaboration, being able to form community out of, in unexpected circumstances. So it really isn't random at all. It's an opportunity for you to align your experience. And really, this is where you connect with admissions, right? It's where you can be vulnerable. And this is the essay that will make people fight for you in the committee room.
Right. Well, I'm certainly envious of their handwriting, because the implication is that it's legible, and mine rarely is. We'll be talking with Jonathan about something that you've touched on, Catherine, the idea of memorable, that this is a marketing application where you're marketing yourself and how that you'll use that. Trisha, before we head to Tuck, we're going to go to NYU Stern, and the word change. Now, there's been a change of curriculum, and it coincided with the change of essays, and the word change has been embedded in that. So take us through perhaps both elements, as the school has continued to evolve and how they've then reflected that in the application itself.
Yeah, so it's kind of similar to what Catherine was saying, actually. That school engagement and being memorable has always been really important to NYU. They've had this strong focus historically for decades on EQ, and that is still important. But it is also a baseline, and they want to take it a step further. You are a good person. You are going to engage in the community. You're smart. You're going to stand out and be memorable. How are you going to use those tools to be more than just someone who's going to join a company after you graduate, or someone who's going to join a club and tick the box of being president or vice president of that club? How can you actually make an impact? And they've adapted their curriculum towards that impact. So they've embraced their own understanding of the word change, and that's reflected actually in a curriculum they called the Change Studio. You can read all about it, and they really want you to do that research. They have it on their website. They have a really cool video, and they call it a call to action. So they're expecting that their students are going to have that enthusiasm, and also have thought about bringing these skills and tools that they are going to elevate in their curriculum to their own curriculum. I think school engagement is also a great way to learn more about it as well. You can speak to specific clubs that you may be interested in, and you can start a club. There was a club, I think, that was founded about 5 years ago called Stern Chats, which is a podcast. And they're so proud of their students to bring them into the future. And that's what they're trying to embrace and convey and look for in their future candidates.
All right. Now, we've observed in the last 10, 15 years that the applications, the essays, there are fewer of them. Sometimes they're getting shorter in the word limits. When I first read the new Stern essay, I thought that they'd really knocked it out of the park, making it short, because it's change and then blank it. And I thought that the candidate just had to fill that word, but they do want to have an explanation behind it. So talk us through the structure and breaking all of that down.
Yeah, I think they do a really good job, as you said, of breaking it down in the question. They have multiple components, so they're giving you sort of an implicit structure of the essay. They want to know, right in the first sentence, we want to know how you view change. So that's the first thing that they want you to answer. And it could be general. It doesn't have to be encapsulated in a word right away. And then they say, change, blanket, fill in the blank. And then how does that word resonate with you? They give you some examples of this. They give you about 5 examples, and you're welcome to use them. You don't have to use them. They have 3 that are directly from their curriculum, which are dare it, dream it, and drive it. So if you do that research, I highly advise anyone who's using those 3 words to make sure you understand their definitions of it. I would recommend using theirs. They have been thoughtful about it. So if you're going to use one of those three, but don't limit yourself to those either. They want to understand what you view change to be, how you're going to embrace that definition in the things that you do, both at Stern and in the world, but primarily at Stern. How are you going to embrace this tagline at Stern is directly what they're asking. So just the sky is the limit, really, but they want to understand who you are, what your values are, how those values align to their values as a school and a culture, and how that's going to motivate you to go that extra mile while you're getting your MBA.
Presumably change, avoid it is not necessarily what they're looking for.
Not.
I'm often with
go
the
ahead.
challenge, writing articles for Forbes and elsewhere of, should I start with my headline and then I'll write the article, or should I write this article and see where it leads me? Is that how would you approach? Is it to start to put down ideas and then come back and test your hypothesis?
You could do it that way. When I work with clients on this essay, I generally advise, let's talk about the story and the impact you have first, and then let's think about what word could summarize and encapsulate that. And you could have an idea of some things that you're thinking about. One of my clients, she was really motivated to have an impact for women through empowerment, and the word empower, it became very natural. It was a word that she wanted to use in the essay anyway, and sometimes it's just that easy. But it's good to have some ideas in mind. It's not a bad idea to maybe write a short list and then see where your story takes you. But I would say, generally speaking, have the story first, what you want to talk about, and then pick the word.
Right. We talk a lot, Trisha, with clients to think, well, what does the school want to hear? What am I supposed to say? And finding that balance between something that might be quite clever, but something that's also very authentic. So again, what's your advice? It really is sort of looking within to find empowerment, or whatever the word that emerges.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We were talking about the 25 random things for Duke, and NYU also has a similar essay. They have the pick 6, which is kind of similar. You pick 6 pictures that express yourself. And this one is also fairly open-ended in that sense. And I think for both, I'm often getting questions, should I come up with something clever? Exactly how you said it. And my advice generally is don't overthink it. They want to know who you are as a person. The dean of the school actually every year, he gives a talk about the Stern student. Hopefully no spoilers here too much, but you're sitting with him in an airport, and it's always nice to find someone you like to chat for a little bit, get to know them, who they are, where they're from. But what he sees a Stern student would do is really be memorable, really have personality, and be open and expressive in who they are and what they want to do. They want to come away from that conversation and say to themselves, I want to go into business with that person. Kind of like you're presenting yourself to the sharks. It's a marketing pitch for yourself, for the value of the school and the value of the future that you can bring to the world. So it should really be authentic. The sky is somewhat the limit. They're not really looking for an answer. If anything, they're looking for the opposite. They're looking for you to bring something new that they haven't thought of.
Now, you mentioned the shark's tank or the dragon's den. Jonathan, perhaps you can remind us of the audience for an application. Who's going to be reading this?
You always have to think about the team, the folks. I'm representing Tuck, and Tuck is unique in that it's all we do is the MBA. We don't have other programs. It matters, and we're also in a rural community. So we're up on the Connecticut River on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. And so you rub elbows with everyone, the faculty, the administration, every single student, the alumni. They are dying to come back each year. Over 60% write a check to the school. And so this focus, it's a smaller program and it's rural. It's so much about the community, which is just fundamental community. You see it in the essays. It's referenced a couple times, and then and as such, and you think about it. So your audience is there to pick the right class, right, of people, and so it's extremely important that fit works, right? You think about the audience. It's not just, hey, we have a big class and I hope it works, but not only that, but they are so vested in you. So the 2 points I have about the audience. One is that you really, really want to make sure you can help them assess fit. And you do that by really being self-aware of who you are, and therefore what career aspirations you have. And then secondly, the flip side is that you get to know the school. And Catherine spoke a bit about speaking to students, dig deep into Tuck, right? So, and then you pull them together. Self-awareness, who am I? What do I want to do? What do I want to get out of the MBA? That's hard work, right? And we at Fortuna can help you with that hard work, right? And then secondly, get to know the school. And then finally, the last piece is like put it all together, right? In the essays, right? Put it together, show that you know the school, right? Be direct. Take it not just like, hey, this is the club's reference, but map out your entire 2 years where you want to go after. Not only are you going to get more out of it as a student in your career, but you're also going to create a much more compelling essay because you've already done all that work and you're showing it. And then when you understand the school, you also, for example, in the second essay, we talk about how does your diverse background contribute to the Tuck community? Like, okay, you've done that self-awareness. You've thought about what makes me diverse and different. And that can be, there's many dimensions, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's your ethnicity, it's your experience, what I've gone through as a person. It could be socioeconomic, it could be, but really think deeply about that. But then it's about putting it onto paper. Again, this is where Fortuna can help you. You write the essays, but we can help make sure that what you're presenting is this, this diverse person that contributes to the community. So that's and you think about the audience, the admissions, they got to pick the right people, and they can only pick the right people, one, if they know the school, right? If you don't know the school, like, we can't do anything. You got to show the school, and then we also have to get to know you. So be bold, right? And I wrote down notes for this. Be bold. Show us who you are. Don't be boring. Don't pick the safe question, the safe answer. Really let us get to know who you are. So then we can really go to bat and choose the right person in this community that's so small, intimate, and passionate. So that's that's a bit of how I think we all think about it. So
with the Fortuna team and their insider business school experience, we're often able to draw back that curtain, and with our clients, just for them to even understand how the AdComs team are working together. And Jonathan, at Tuck, you'll be sometimes reading essays together. So the idea of being bold, certainly being memorable and interesting, that becomes a discussion among the members of the AdComs.
And we all go down. There's a special room. We get together. There's coffee and there's food, and there's a champion, right? Someone who's read, and to the extent you have the stories, right? You've shared the anecdotes. That give them that snippet, that piece that helps them say, yes, this is the person that climbed the mountain, right? There's, last year, a gentleman went from the mascot at a bank to presenting to the C-level. So like, mascot to C-level, right? Like, something like that helps you be memorable. And everyone in the committee, like, oh yeah, it's the mascot guy, right? And think about that. And how do you but you got to put it on the paper, and if it's not on paper, if it's in your head, or you think it's going to be in the interview, forget about it. It's got to be in the paper, in your essays.
Right. Now we talk about the school of tough love, but in this case, Jonathan, it's showing Tuck love. What do you mean?
It's and we say it all the time, like, oh, we didn't show enough Tuck love in the essays, and what does that mean, right? So what is Tuck? Tuck is a community. It's personal, connected, transformative, right? So how do you show that you understand that it's personal, right? And connected. Oh, I spoke with the alumni. I always also, and this is something to do with all schools, always go back to the mission, vision statement of the school, and to the extent you can reference it, be direct. Don't let us like try to figure it out. Be direct. The Tuck's mission, it really speaks to me, right? And so that's like evidence that you took the time to understand the essence of my school, and then articulate it. And I also highly recommend that Catherine was saying, talk to many students and alumni and take pieces, like, what did I do well at Tuck to get the most out of it? And then you can begin to put that into the essays, and that's showing Tuck love, that I care enough. We're busy people in admissions. Like, you took the time not to just do a a search and replace from Fuqua to Tuck, but when I read this, I know that you care about my school. And that's tough love, right? That's that shows it. And you should do it, every school, you should be special, like feel like your school is the only one, like the most special school. Do take the time, and the work you do is just going to help you either choose the right school or get into the best school or take the most advantage when you're there. If you've gone through all that work, you already know what club you're going to lead, or you know what internship you're going to focus, your career development officer that you're going to get to know, and you're just going to get so much more out of it. You're spending spending a lot of money in opportunity costs. This is one of the defining decisions of your life, and that's why you work with us. But all that gets done beforehand, as Catherine said, and reflected, and then in the interviews.
But perhaps Fortuna could move into a new branch of T-shirts, show the Tuck love, or the
there you go.
That Stern Haas Fuqua. The idea, Pete, as we think about essays, you used the word holistic earlier on. Now there's the video component, and of course interviews at a later stage, recommenders. What role did they play? I mean, did you start with other parts of the application to lead to the essays? We sometimes jump straight into the essays. How do they fit into the overall assessment that you're making?
Well, typically, the essays are an opportunity for the candidate to share information that's not obvious from other parts of the application that are available to the admissions committee. And, one of the things that I think all of us at Fortuna do is remind clients that the essays should help present your profile to the admissions committee, but they shouldn't really be a regurgitation of things that we can already see on your resume or in other ways. And I think they're very important because, to highlight a point that Jonathan just made, it's often these things that are shared through some of the unique questions or through some of the more self-reflective parts of the application that really help a candidate stand out for the admissions committee. They help the admissions committee understand who you are beyond your stats and beyond your titles. And I think for a candidate to reflect on the essays in that way and say, what is this sharing about me? And is it important? Is it truly reflective of what I care about and what I'm interested in? One of the things that applicants sometimes do is they try to figure out what the admissions committee wants to read, and then they tailor their essay to that. Usually they get it wrong. They're off on what the admissions committee wants to read. But the other thing is, if you try to do that, you end up with an essay that is flat because it doesn't really reflect anything that you are or that you care about. And so I think the essays can have a larger role than candidates expect. I actually remember people saying, does the admissions committee actually read any of that, or they just look at the resume and the test scores? And I assure you that at all the schools that are present today, people are reading your essays.
Yeah. And did you have instances, Pete, where perhaps you'd look through job titles, bullet points on the resume, got to the essays and were like, wow, it's wonderful to now understand this about the candidate. I'm eager to meet them. Could the essays trigger that sort of enthusiasm?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it was Catherine maybe who said that sometimes it's that connection where the admissions committee readers really feel like, okay, I get this person, I understand their motivation, and I understand why our school is the best place for them. And it generates a level of excitement such that I think, one of the readers will fight for someone of the admissions committee, say, okay, I know this person's GMAT is not as high as someone else, but look at how well they fit with our culture. Look at all the things that we offer that really connect with and align with what this person is trying to do with their life. So absolutely, they create that kind of energy.
Yeah,
And
and
actually,
this idea, Catherine, Pete was saying, as an admissions office, you really want to then identify, here's an individual that's going to thrive and flourish at our school, and loving that sort of chemistry. Presumably the application, the essays included, there's a dialogue between admissions and career services. What role does that play? Is it sort of the reality check, or people in career services saying, yeah, based on this, we'd be really confident this is very coherent, this is very achievable?
yes, I think there's a huge, well, I'll take a step back and just to quickly reiterate something that Pete said. When I'm breaking it down for clients, I often say, the key is understanding the skills and experiences that you are bringing to the table, the skills and experiences that you need from the MBA, and then why specifically that school, to reach your short and long-term goals. So that needs to be present in order for the schools to look at your essays and your previous experience to understand whether your short and long-term goals are realistic. Right. And so if there is a question about that, if there is a question as to whether this person can successfully make a transition from marketing to investment banking, or from investment banking to consulting, or engineering to consulting, or whatever the case may be, if that is in question for whatever reason, at Fuqua, they will bring in the dean of the career center, and she will be that kind of final say in terms of whether or not she thinks that we could help them reach their goals. Now, we also did a lot of coaching with admissions to help them understand what to look for before they're even reviewing the applications. I mean, most of them have been doing this for years and, have a sense of what an investment banker does, what somebody in marketing does, what a consultant does, what a program manager does, and what they want to do just based on reading thousands and thousands of apps every year. But there are questions sometimes and different factors that play into that. So if there is a question, they will bring in someone from the career center to talk through that and make sure that that person has thought through whether or not Fuqua is the right program to get them to where they want to go.
Yeah. Trisha, the idea of dare it, dream it, and drive it sounds very purposeful. There's a word that Pete has used in another session that we recorded together that's always stuck in my mind. And as you were talking earlier about EQ, that's still very much part of the DNA and the fabric at Stern. The idea of vulnerability, again, sort of driving it and always, being the accomplished, strongest person. But sometimes that can lose the authenticity. What role might vulnerability play in sharing a very personal story in your essays?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the best thing you could do is really open yourself up to your adcom. I think we've touched on it before of like, if you try too hard to give them the answer they're looking for, your essay is going to fall flat, and you want that person in the adcom who's reading your essays to go into a room and fight for you. The people who are going to be motivated to fight for you are the people who are going to feel like they know you best and that they like you. And I think that's really important to really think about, would you like a person who really isn't telling you who they are, or, sharing those unique and vulnerable experiences? The people that personally I really connect to, and I myself am a Stern alumni, are people who reciprocate the disclosures that I share. I'm willing to share a part of me. Can you reciprocate that disclosure in your essays? The application is ultimately a relationship, their first relationship with the school and the community. There are specific opportunities to talk about your EQ in your recommendations, but in terms of your essays, I think the best way to do that is in that change essay, where you're really talking about what motivates you and how you're going to use that as a driver. And I think that drive it, dream it, dare it really does express how NYU feels about it. And then the pick six, again, I know I mentioned it earlier, that kind of personality of who you are. It's more than just, I'm going into tech, so I'm going to do a bunch of tech related photos. That's not really what they're looking for. They're looking more for like, here's a picture of my family, because family is really important to me. It's kind of like that dilemma of writing a wedding speech of, do I make it funny, or do I do something from the heart? And the answer, at least for NYU, and I would guess for most school, is from the heart. And that's, I think, a good understanding of what they're looking for holistically, and then take it that extra mile and understand the school and the culture and imagine yourself there.
Right. I should have had your advice, Trisha, for the last wedding speech that I gave. I went for funny, and there was a lengthy silence in the room. Good things come in threes. They come in fours with the DLPs at Haas 2, or they come in 25s at Fuqua. But coming in threes, Jonathan, you've often said, well, try to connect with 3 students, 3 alums, have those conversations. Is it that you're then looking to fill out paragraph 8, 9, and 10 of your essay, showing that Tuttle of with the conversations that you've had? How can you use those conversations as part of the overall application?
Yeah, it's the technique migrated from career services a bit. Hey, I want to be an investment banker. It's like, what do you do? Well, first thing you do, you're going to send you down to Wall Street. You're going to meet with, 20 investment bankers and do, networking. Networking calls, conversations, and you apply the same concept to your application. And what you're doing, if you're going to be an investment banker, there's really 3 goals. One, is you're showing interest, right? So, and that can get who else have you spoken to? I spoke to, these 5 people, work at your bank. So when you get and write the essays, you can reference, even people that you've spoken to. Sometimes they'll even send notes to admissions. Oh, great guy. And so that's one piece. Like, it's signaling that, you care, I'm there. Secondly, there's the learning. Like, you can't really learn a school with a website, right? You got to talk to the students, you got to talk to the alumni, and be structured with the conversations, have them be open-ended. In some ways, you're applying design thinking type concepts, like, tell me about, why did you choose Doc? And why did you do an MBA? What did you get out of it, right? So you're learning, in writing, and then lastly, you're by having all these conversations, you're getting smarter, you're getting connections, and you can then layer on top yourself, your self-awareness, and tease out themes that you see that resonate with yourself, whether it's, what am I going to do at Talk, right? Now, I know I want to do energy, so I'm going to do Reverence Initiative. I'm going to, go work, because I know, these are the 3 companies that, and you put that in your essay, you work, that's compelling, right? And so that's, and only though by having those conversations, I believe that you really, really get into and get that level of depth. And every admission, we can tell, right? We can tell when it's just, you just look at the website and you threw it together. And, so that's how, that's how I think, like, investment banking. I used to be an investment banker. It's like, it's a tough job, right? It kind of sucks. You got to know what you're getting into. Right. And by going to Wall Street and speaking to 25 banks, and just like, they know, the bank, investment banking, and they know, the firm. Same with your MBA. It's your biggest decision in your life. You're like quitting your job. You're going across the world. You're going to this little town where it's -20 on days in the winter. Like, I'm not selling it. And you better know the school, and you better show admissions that you know the school. Otherwise, it's just way too big a risk for you, way too big a risk for us, and you're doing a bad essay. So that's that's how you're gonna have miserable days, right? And when you have those miserable nights, and it's like, God, I'm working so hard, but you made the right decision because you did all the work, right? And the same applies for when you get into multiple schools. Like, kids would say, hey, should I go to the Cell Day for Gold? I was like, go and see if it's the right fit, right? Same with, like, Is it worth it? Yes, it's worth it, because you're going to, you want to make the right decisions. So.
Yeah, you remind me, we talk a lot with clients about enjoying this opportunity to apply to business school, to actually step back from
I love that. But what you just said is profound. Like, I'm interested, I'm learning, like I meet all these people, like that's the kind of curiosity, muscle you want to have. That's a great point. Like, have fun, like, have fun. If you're not having fun, like maybe, you shouldn't be an MBA or you shouldn't go to school, right? So, that's a great point. And then when you have fun, people want you there. That's to Trisha's point. It's like, do I want to be with this person? He looks miserable. Like, no, I don't want to, show you're having fun. Same with the essays. Have fun with the essays, Yeah. Like,
and if you're having fun, was it Edison that said, it didn't feel like you're working at it? But we do now face 6 weeks, Pete, to the round one deadlines. So in terms of those next steps, structure, conversations with recommenders, the sort of conversations with alumni and students that Jonathan was suggesting, what would your tip be for ensuring that everything that you then capture in your essay is going to be compelling and effective?
Well, I think the key to that, and for a successful application generally, is to make sure that you've taken the time to think through the aspects of yourself and of your interests that you want to share, and make sure that in some way you've brought those things forward. There's a fine line though, because occasionally candidates will come up with that list of things they want to share, and then they neglect to do something I mentioned earlier. They don't answer the question. So I have my 5 talking points about myself that I'm going to share, and whatever the essay question is, those 5 things are going to be in the answer. That I don't mean that strategy. That's not a good strategy. Know for yourself what are the aspects of your experience and your knowledge and your areas of development that are going to be well served by getting an MBA at school X. And just be ready to make sure that those things come through in the answers that you give. And part of that is, and of course, all of us at Fortuna do this with our clients, part of that is taking time at the beginning to really create a strategy based on the profile of the individual candidate. Everyone's different. And it's really important for someone to know themselves, to know what they're looking for in the MBA program, to know what they bring to the program for others, and to have an understanding about their strengths and areas for development, so that you going back to Plato, I guess, know thyself. If you know yourself, you'll be able to do this in a way that teases out those important facets of what makes you unique and well suited for that MBA program.
Right. I mean, sharing an hour with all 4 of you, the enthusiasm, in fact, it'll be my final question with Vaibhavi, who's written in to share her enthusiasm. But Catherine, many people might be applying to 3, 4, 5 schools. With all of the school-specific discussion that we've had in this webinar, stepping back to think about an overall strategy for applying to business school, how do you sort of look at these different elements and then perhaps think for Haas, for Fuqua, for Stern, for Tuck, how it might relate?
It's being clear about what it is, kind of to reiterate some of things that we've already said, but what is it that you need from the MBA, and then how that specific school provides it. And that could be specific technical aspects in terms of, finance or accounting or, advanced Excel or whatever the case may be, but it could also be more soft skills like leadership and, influencing people and working on that executive level communication. And each school offers different ways of doing that. And so that's where talking to students and understanding, how these things are applied outside of the classroom, can be really helpful. There will be areas of overlap. Everyone is going to say they have a collaborative community. Like that is just, you're going to hear that everywhere. But what does that mean at Fuqua? What does Team Fuqua mean? And how is that different from, you know, the culture at Stern or Tuck or Haas? Because using that high level, you know, in terms of what you need from an MBA and, you know, I need the accounting and blah, blah, blah. Well, you can get that anywhere. So why is it that you want to go to this specific school?
Yeah. Trisha, a big question to wrap up with you. The well-represented profile, perhaps the consultants, the bankers Jonathan was mentioning from tech, and then the less traditional backgrounds, like one of our viewers who has written in. Advice perhaps to stand out in the well-represented pools, but also advice to leverage that less traditional profile.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Stern gives you, at least specifically Stern gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of share who you are. I don't think there is necessarily, you know, a specific place you need to share it in your application. If you think of each essay as an opportunity to share some aspect about what makes you unique, there will be ample opportunity to represent yourself. Don't be afraid to share something that's unique. If it fits outside of that traditional profile, if you're saying to yourself, you know, this is what a tech person normally is, think of that unique difference in the traditional profile as an asset, especially for these schools that are thinking about change. You can physically embody that change for the school by just representing yourself within that community. Seek inspiration by talking to other people from non-traditional backgrounds, regardless of the industry that they came in. Let that be that inspiration of how to market yourself as that different person. But there's really no guideline for who is the perfect MBA or a perfect person in a specific role. If you're coming from finance and you want to go into tech, that's okay. Talk about how those financial skills will allow you to bring value that isn't already there.
Great. And Jonathan, let's finish with this question of Vabavi, who loves Tuck so much. She's actually making her boyfriend jealous. And she feels that she has a dozen things that she loves about the school. How should she show it? Could she actually overdo it and show too much love, or you know, seem too eager? Does she need to step back a little?
I think we made the point earlier. Do we want to? Do I like this person? Right. So, in their meaning, do I want them on my study group? Do I want, you know, one of the deans that runs the school, Sally Yeager, is just, you know, is she going to end up in Sally's off, you know, the person and be disruptive because it's, you know, you're crossing a self-awareness line. You know, so I just, you know, I think she'll have plenty of opportunity. Each applicant will have plenty of opportunity. It will be obvious, but also be aware of the line, because, you know, same way with career networking, you can just do too much, and it then becomes where, hey, maybe that's not the right fit, right? As much as I love it. So that's, you know, that's my guidance on that. You know, I will share one story that an applicant knitted. He knitted the crest for Tuck, and he mailed it to Donna Clark. She's down at Dartmouth now, and said, I want to be a stitch in the Tuck something or other. Right? So he's like, it was like 6'5" guy, and you know, and you know, he got in, like he got off the wait list. So you know, and that's to the memorable, like, you know, be strategic, I guess, is my thought, and one way to be strategic is to really connect with alums that may have may matter, and then have them send a note, you know, not just, oh, you know, you're a good guy, but something a little deeper, more authentic. And the Tuck does go into the folder, and, you know, it won't sway one or the other, but it will indicate that, yeah, this person's really serious. So that can be, you know, there are tactics, you know, to get there.
I'm going to make a note in my diary, Jonathan, in early October to reach out to the admissions and ask if knitwear or knitting featured in some of the round one applications. I hope that knit one, pearl one, that they can go pretty quickly because those deadlines are approaching. And one of the viewers said, hey, if I am applying to 4 or 5 schools, what are the next steps? I think, a panelist have showed just how distinct each personality of the school is. And that's a wonderful thing. And your opportunity to really connect with these schools and understand those underlying values and the extraordinary 2-year experience that you are going to enjoy. This is one of 4 sessions, the masterclasses that we're offering on essays to applications. The first 2 are already on YouTube. This will be soon recorded. So if you missed a section or you want to share it with friends or colleagues, please do. And then we're going to be back next week to go international. We'll be looking at INSEAD, the business school for the world, and London Business School, Feeding the Ducks in Regent's Park. So that's next Thursday. Whether you're applying to 1 school, 5 schools, reach out. Let's have a conversation about your personal plans. You've already got a sense. I talked about kindness and creativity and commitment. My colleagues are extraordinarily good at holding up that mirror to really help you explore your story and find that level of authenticity, seeing those things, whether you're a software engineer level 2, an associate consultant, the things that really, really do resonate. So we'll hope that you'll reach out and we can set up a session to talk about that together and talk about your plans, whether you're applying to 1 or to many schools. But thank you for being with us. And of course, thank you to my colleagues, to Pete and to Catherine, to Trisha and to Jonathan. It's always wonderful to share these sessions together. Thank you, everybody.